Time to move on. So many emotions running around, spinning and twisting, not sitting still. You invested so much into this relationship. If it stops, it's against your will. Mother, father, friend, sister, brother, husband or child. If your relationship has ended, it will drive you wild. Whether it was your decision or not, just the thought of it ending can make you want to drop. Months, years of love and care, it's all gone in an instant. But were you staying there because of fear and the unknown? No one should be alone. Rooting down and reflecting within, you know things were not right. It seems like it has gone suddenly, but this didn't happen overnight. Who's to blame? Shall we waste and ponder? Shall we cry and plot revenge? Shall we sit and wonder? Who's to blame? Shall we just move on? Fight the inner weaknesses and hold our head strong. No matter your struggle or internal damage inside, ride the waves, don't run and hide. It's time to move on, no question or thought. It's changing direction and not getting caught. It's time to move on with all that you are, pushing yourself to get you far. It's time to move on and change your path, your life in your hands with your own very raft. So in saving yourself, dust off and dance. It's time to move on with no backward glance.
Time to Move On is a poem written again quite recently, but Time to Move On reflected several points in my life when I had to make a decision. Time to Move On reflects a decision has been made, okay? So, various points in my life, I was possibly in a place maybe of depression, in a place where I was just finding it hard to cope with what was happening in my life. So, for example, my daughter had been in a very violent relationship. And unfortunately, because of that violence, I lost my first grandchild. And my mind became very vulnerable. And even though I lost my grandchild, and that individual who had done such an heinous act was convicted and received a suspended sentence, my daughter decided to go back to that individual. And then I found out that she was pregnant again. So you can understand, hopefully, that I was in a state of explicit fear that I was going to lose another grandchild. And at that point in time, having younger children for myself, it became quite clear to me that if I continued down the road of being so explicitly fearful, I myself was going to be mentally compromised. And I made a decision that actually I was no longer going to engage in that fear, which also meant that I had to actually be at distance with my daughter during the time that she chose to be in a relationship that was violent and very dangerous. I chose that I was going to move on from that fear, and I actually was going to take care of myself, and I was going to take care of my other children. And in making that decision, it freed me. It made me free in making that decision. Also, again, when my marriage broke down, there was loads of decisions that I could have made. I could have sat down in a dark room and decided to cry. I could have decided, I'm going to feel sorry for myself. However, at the time I had a baby that she wasn't even 2 yet. And I made that decision very, very quickly. This has happened, but it's time to move on into something of almost like a cleansing, because what had happened was almost like a darkness. And you know what? You can look at it as a darkness, but within that marriage, I had 2 children, and my children are not dark. So in reflecting, yes, there was a breakdown of that marriage, but out of that was 2 children that I loved incredibly. So I decided that the end of the marriage was the close of one chapter, and my time to move on was moving into a new chapter of something positive, a new chapter of something that was pure light, and a new chapter of inspiration. And that's my time to move on.
It's time to move on with all that you are, pushing yourself to get you far. It's time to move on and change your path, your life in your hands with your own very raft.
For me, it's time to move on. When you make decisions like that, they're not easy. It's so easy to slip back. It's so easy, to be weary of, I'm moving on, I'm doing something else, it's going to be new to me, and all of the anxieties and fear. So when I say things like, pushing yourself, it does actually mean that you have to push yourself, recognizing that you are no longer going to be in your comfort zone, recognizing that you actually might be doing something that you don't necessarily want to do, would normally do, but you're going to do it anyway. When I say things like, making your own path, it is exactly as it is. It's understanding that you're moving on in a different direction, a new clean slate. And when I talk about, moving on and, with your own raft, it's really saying that regardless of where you've come from, regardless of the darkness. So what I'm saying is that even though you're moving on, all of the bad things that have happened, it's still going to be with you, but it's going to change your life in a different way. So moving on with everything that has happened to something good.